The old rotary phone hadn't been connected to a line in over 40 years. It was a relic, a piece of nostalgic decoration in a small antique shop, its cord cut, its soul silent. But one Tuesday afternoon, it began to ring. It wasn't a gentle chime. It was a loud, insistent, impossible ringing that echoed through the dusty shop. For 3 days, it rang. The shop owner, a woman of deep but quiet faith, finally answered it. The message she heard on the other end was not from a person. It was a divine call, a single, mysterious word that would unravel the greatest mystery of her life and lead her to the family she never knew she had. This is the story of a phone call that crossed the boundary between worlds, a divine message that proves God will use any means necessary to get our attention. Her name was Eleanor, and her antique shop was her sanctuary. It was a quiet place filled with the ghosts of other people's lives. Old furniture, forgotten photographs, and silent, time-worn objects. Eleanor herself felt a bit like one of her antiques, a person with a history, but with her best years behind her. She was an orphan, raised in the foster care system, and had spent her entire life with a quiet, aching sense of being disconnected, of having no roots. The stakes for Eleanor were not about her business or her health. They were about her identity. The central question of her life, where do I come from, was a locked door for which she had no key. She had long since made peace with the idea that she would never know the answer. When the black rotary phone first started ringing, she thought she was imagining it. The sound was so out of place, so impossible, it had to be a hallucination. The phone was a prop, a piece of dead technology. A phone with a severed cord cannot ring. It was a fundamental law of physics. But it rang again, a loud, shrill, undeniable summons. The feeling in the shop, usually so peaceful and still, became charged with a thrilling, terrifying energy. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the impossible sound. She checked the phone. The cord was indeed cut. There was no battery, no hidden electronic device. This was not a trick. This was something else. For 3 days, the phone rang intermittently. It would ring for a minute, then fall silent for an hour. It was a persistent, patient caller. Eleanor's fear slowly transformed into a profound and sacred curiosity. This was not a random event. This was a message. The persistent ringing was a divine knock on the door of her soul. She knew, with an unshakable, intuitive certainty, that she was being called. What was she afraid of? She was a woman who had prayed her entire life for a connection, for a sign that she was not alone in the universe. And now, the universe was literally calling her. On the third day, as the phone let out another shrill ring, she walked over to it, her heart pounding. The plastic of the receiver felt cold and solid in her trembling hand. She lifted it to her ear, expecting static or silence or perhaps even a dial tone. Instead, she heard a voice. It was not a human voice. It was a voice that seemed to be made of wind and whispers, a voice that was both ancient and immediate. It spoke only a single word, a word that was a name that Eleanor had never heard before. Pennington. And then the line went dead. The phone never rang again. The single word Pennington echoed in her mind. It felt like a key, a clue, a piece of a puzzle she didn't know she was supposed to be solving. She had no idea what it meant. Was it a person? A place? For the first time in years, she felt a surge of purpose, a sense of being part of a larger, mysterious story. She was no longer a passive observer of her life. She was an active investigator in a divine mystery. This was her call to adventure, a summons to leave the ordinary world of her quiet life and embark on a sacred quest. The phone call had activated her hope, giving her a pathway to follow. She started with the only tool she had, the internet. She searched the word Pennington, along with her county and her date of birth. The search results brought up an old newspaper article from a neighboring town, a birth announcement from 50 years ago. A baby girl, born to a Mr. and Mrs. Pennington, who had been given up for adoption on the very day Eleanor had been left at the orphanage. The dates, the details, they all matched. The article listed the name of the hospital where the baby was born. Eleanor drove to that town, to that hospital. In their archives, she found her original birth certificate, and on it, the name of her birth mother, Sarah Pennington. Over the next few weeks, one clue led to another. She discovered that her mother had passed away years ago, but that she had an older brother she never knew existed. She found him, an elderly man living a quiet life just 2 towns away. The day she met her brother was the day the final piece of her identity clicked into place. He wept when he saw her. He told her their mother had spoken of her every single day of her life, that she had prayed that one day her lost daughter would find her way home. He gave her a box of her mother's letters filled with a love and a grief that spanned a lifetime. This story is a breathtaking illustration of the divine message framework. God's communication is not limited by our technology or our understanding of physics. He can make a dead phone ring. He can send a one-word message across the veil of time to answer a 50-year-old prayer. The impossible ringing was a perfect symbol of Eleanor's own life, a disconnected soul that God was about to plug back into its source. The story challenges us to expand our definition of communication. We are used to text messages and emails, but the divine has an infinite number of ways to call us. It might be a recurring dream, a chance encounter, a song on the radio, or even an impossible ringing phone. The key is to be listening, to recognize that when the universe sends you a signal that defies logic, it is almost certainly a message meant for you. Eleanor spent her life feeling like a wrong number, but God had her number all along. He was just waiting for the perfect moment to call, to connect her to her story, to her family, to her true identity as a beloved and long-awaited daughter. Your name is also known. Your story is also written. And when the divine calls you, no matter how impossible the method, have the courage to pick up the phone. If you are listening for the divine calls in your own life, consider following for more stories that prove God is always trying to connect with us in the most mysterious and beautiful ways.